Hello and welcome to Xena Warrior Podcast. My name is Vera and I'm joined as always by my two therapeutic co-hosts, Katie.
Hi.
And Livy.
Hi. Yeah, we need therapy.
Hi. Group
That's what
therapy
this is.
sesh.
Well, it's funny you say that. That's exactly what Whoosh called their issues, like right around the finale time. Group therapy part 1, group therapy part 2.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess this is our version.
Yes, we are doing the Great Unpinning.
Oh
today.
my god, so many pins.
We're gonna unpin Xena.
Yeah, unpin it.
No, it's funny every time.
Yep. Some business before we get into all these topics. We have some scheduling updates,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
So the biggest, most important factor in our schedule is that the three of us are going on vacation together.
All right.
Oh my
To
goodness.
celebrate
Whoa.
having achieved this milestone.
Everybody's like, wow.
Yeah, great.
So bye, guys.
But that gives you ample time to submit your mailbag questions.
Yes. We will be recording a mailbag that will drop at the end of October. Mm-hmm. So that gives you a lot of time to figure out what you want to say. It can be about anything this
Right.
time,
Yes.
including the finale.
Right,
Mostly
and
the finale.
we kept
Technically,
some.
it's the finale mailbag, but
Right,
yeah,
but it can
whatever.
be, as always, it could be anything, guys. And we already kept some finale ones from last mailbag.
We
so
still
already-
have those
if
questions.
you remember submitting one that was specifically about it, we probably kept it. But yeah, talk to us about anything, or ask us anything. And follow us on the socials because we have some Xena-related stuff on our trip.
Yeah.
But
But maybe Xena themed.
Right.
In a
yes.
way.
In a way it is. It's not maybe, it is.
It
It
is
is.
Xena-themed vacation.
Perhaps.
But
purposefully.
Yes. But not what you think, guys.
Maybe
not what you think.
I don't know what people
What do
think
they
at this
think?
point. But you can definitely, I usually say this at the end, but Xena Warrior Pod is the Twitter and Xena Warrior Podcast is the Instagram.
Yeah.
So if you're not following us there already and you want little cute things.
If you want to go on vacation with us,
Yeah.
Anyway,
vicariously,
hopefully-
don't come on our vacation.
My dad
We don't have
and
room in
Wi-Fi.
the hotel.
Oh, no, yeah,
Or
no.
suitcases. Can't pack you
And,
in there.
and then this is also contingent upon the Wi-Fi and
Yes.
Oh
You
my
know,
good
normal
stuff.
thing.
Okay.
Oh, so people like
Anyway,
you're going somewhere with maybe spotty Wi-Fi.
Uh-oh.
A clue.
we're just
All
going to go
right.
to the woods, really. It's a time for us to take ourselves to the woods.
I mean, this is a good time.
We're going
to, go
to
the
Walden
woods.
Pond.
We just admitted that we
Thoreau
liked
style.
the finale, so it's time to go to the woods.
Yeah.
Run away.
Yeah.
So speaking of liking the finale, I have to say I really enjoyed how people have slowly just crawled out and secretly
woodwork.
shh, I like it too, shh, that kind of thing at us.
I mean, that's exactly what we were hoping for.
Yeah, their voices are much quieter than
Group
the other.
therapy. There's also
yeah.
the support group for people
Yeah.
who feel like they are not entitled to their opinions because of the great outpouring of rage, which we are about to discuss.
Yes, yeah. Why don't we just jump right in
Dive
there?
right
Okay.
in. So, the fans did not like the finale.
The gasp.
Yeah. That seems to be the loudest thing on Earth. There's a lot of hatred for these episodes. That's not to say that everyone watching at the time hated it. I think people did like it at the time.
I'm sure there's
Some
always,
people. Yeah.
a range of reactions.
Sure. Not every single person who watched
Right.
it on what day did it air? Something 2001.
June 2001.
I just want to know. Oh, I also want to say off the top, because of all the stuff we're going to talk about, and I feel like sometimes we're kind of bad about this. Definitely spoilers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer are upcoming. Definitely spoilers for The 100 are
Yeah.
upcoming. Probably more spoilers, and we'll
Okay,
shout
yeah,
them
we'll-
out.
we'll-
We'll try to.
we'll try.
before the-
The 100
Maybe
season
Breaking
3.
Bad. It occurred to me to bring up Breaking Bad. So
Interesting.
Why? Trigger warning for me. I hate that show.
I kind of just got pinged in my head for a random thing that I wanted to say about Buffy, spoiler for season 5, which is that within the span of about a month or so, both Xena and Buffy died on TV.
It's an intense month.
Oh, spoilers for Battlestar Galactica as well.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad we're getting this off the top.
If you were watching both of those shows, woof, that was a lot.
Yeah.
However, Buffy, of course, did come with the notion that she was going to be resurrected on a new network.
Right, and if the show was not picked up, she would be dead.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was the point.
Yeah.
We can discuss that, actually.
Yeah.
Not now, though. We not off the top.
No, I just
put a pin in it.
I was like, which one was first? I think it was Buffy. I think Buffy might have aired first.
Probably. I think the Xena finale was delayed, preempted by various other things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
June is late.
Yeah, May 22nd was Buffy season 5. And then Xena was June 18th.
Buffy
pretty close.
Did it first.
But Xena, of course, had already died and come back
a million times. Yeah.
Anyway, I felt like there was a lot of crossover audience for both of those shows.
Yeah,
so that was probably a particularly intense time.
Period.
Very emotional.
Oh man, I was like so into all of it.
Yes, yes, you were.
Yes.
Not unlucky.
Sorry.
But anyway, yes, a very large, very vocal majority of the fandom did not like the finale, and to say did not like is a extreme understatement. And that is because the Xena fan base, of course, is the majority queer women, and the fact that Xena died at the end fit into a very long line of a particular trope that we're going to talk about, and was very, very upsetting.
I think prior to 2016, the trope was called dead lesbian syndrome.
Yeah.
But in 2016, it became known as bury your gays. We mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about queer baiting, because it's definitely a related trope, related subject matter. But at the time, we pinned that discussion. So the first of the pins that we are unpinning is bury your gays.
The first pin. Yeah, and I kind of said I think we're going to argue some stuff where I say, like, it fits in, but it also doesn't fit the trope. Like, I don't think that it actually fits into the trope, but just in terms of kind of qualifying where a lot of the anger came from, I think it's a very complicated topic, and it could be its own, like, 5-hour episode. But, like, at the end of the day, I do think that it can boil down, particularly in terms of an emotional response, to something, like, really simple, in that you're spending 6 years with these characters, and you're seeing yourself represented on screen, and then this character dies, and it feels like a real death. And that is where all the anger comes from. And I think it's too easy to just look at something and go, it's television, it's not real. It feels very, very real. And I think that when I'm reading stuff that does come from that place of anger, that's where I'm always trying to, like, imagine that where that feeling is coming from, is that this feels real. It feels like someone actually died.
And it's also that problem of representation. When you have so few characters on screen who you feel represent you, you want, there's so much pressure on those characters to embody everything you want for yourself. The way you want to be seen, the way you want to live your life, the way you want your life to end. And that's a lot to put on a television character. But at the same time, it's like, if there are so few characters out there for you, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
It's a systemic problem.
And it's really hard because this show, the two characters were the leads, and that's really rare.
That's part of why
unfortunately.
This is part of the complicated nature that is Xena Warrior Princess. So I'm sitting here kind of assuming that the people who are listening to us already know what we're talking about, and that may not be the case for everybody. So I just want to read a little bit about the trope and its history, and then we can kind of talk about the experience of the year 2016, which was also the year that we watched Xena.
That's wild. I never made that connection.
It is.
Yeah. The year of Bury Your Gays is the year of Xena Warrior podcast.
I liked this definition from a scholarly journal that I found on the good old interwebs nets from the McNair Scholars Journals from University 2017 article called Bury Your Gaze, History, Usage, and Context. So just for a little bit of background, this is to quote the article, Bury Your Gaze is a literary trope that has appeared in media across genre since the end of the 19th century. Works using the trope will feature a same-gender couple, and with one of the lovers dying and the other realizing they were never actually gay, often running into the arms of a heterosexual partner. This trope was originally used as a way for gay authors to write about gay characters without coming under fire for breaking laws and social mandates against the, quote, endorsement of homosexuality. However, they go on to say, like, it continues to persist, starting from the 1800s all the way up through now Hollywood, and then into science fiction television programs of 2016 and beyond. Just to elaborate a little bit further on how this trope works narratively, they say that the pattern of this trope's usage states that in a narrative work, novels especially, which features a same-gender romantic couple, one of the lovers must die or otherwise be destroyed by the end of the story. Many instances of this trope draw a direct correlation between the couple confessing their feelings for one another, kissing, having sex for the first time, and the character's death. They often die mere moments or pages after their relationship is confirmed for the audience. The surviving lover will then go through a process of reacclimation whereby they realize that their attraction amounted to an experiment or temporary lapse in judgment. And then it goes on a little further. And I think that last bit is a little bit more novel-based and a little less the 2016 and beyond historic examples that we might be familiar with and talking about from TV. But that's just a bit of background.
It's true, though. Also, you can't help but think about the fans who got upset when Lexa died, and also when Tara died. Then the threat that Willow and Clark were going to then enter into a heterosexual relationship.
Right.
I imagine is
because
very
particularly
present.
both of those women were with men or
Prior.
shipped with men.
Yeah.
Well, no, Clark definitely was with other men. I'm thinking of Bellamy, but like other like actual dudes.
Yeah.
So therefore, they'd go back.
I love how you're like actual dudes, not Bellamy.
Sorry, the fight, the big ship wars were Bellark versus Klex. Okay,
I know, and this is again you can kind of see here as well. Like the more we evolve in the way that we think and the way we understand human sexuality and everything, is that like. That is true, and then also don't erase bisexuality, but then also how does it play into the trope? Like, it's very intense. There's a lot of it. I don't want to get sidetracked by my feelings about Willow Rosenberg. So let's not do that. But yeah, so particularly for me, when I think about that trope, and then I think about the everything that came out of Lexa and the 100, it is very specific. And for my relationship with Xena, the fact that it's about these two women in these like lead roles over 134 episodes, telling a very specific story on that level of this narrative. I firmly believe that they earned the right to kill Xena. People can argue about the ending and the way it happened and whatnot, but I think that the story like earned it in a way that when you talk about the kind of more specific points of a specific trope that the 100% like paint by numbers walked into, and Tara on Buffy 100% paint by numbers walked into. It's just it feels different to me as a response. So I don't feel like it is doing this trope. However,
it fits the trope.
It kind of fits.
It fits in that they're queer characters and they're separated. Yeah. Bury your gaze. Xena is buried at the end. I mean, there's no way to be like, this doesn't fit the trope. But for me, the foremost reason that Xena is sort of beyond this trope is that Xena and Gabrielle are the lead characters of the show. The show is about them. The show has centered their experiences all the way through. The show itself is queer. Yes. So by killing Xena at the end, I don't feel like the show has purged itself of its queerness or punish the characters for being queer. I feel like it is still centering the experience of these two women and centering their values and being true to what Xena as a character embodied.
Yeah. And yeah, that rings true to me, and I feel like it's important to kind of this is one of those areas where I feel like all things can be true, like so many things can be true at the same time, and you can hold these conflicting feelings because, yeah, on that level, I absolutely agree.
So yeah, I feel like in some of these other examples that provoked outrage, especially in the case of Lexa and Tara, they were, I mean, side characters is underselling it. They were both really important characters, but in the end, they were not the characters the show was about.
Right.
Like, Lexa had another job elsewhere where she was a lead character. That's why the actress was leaving.
She just got it, okay. I don't know. Oh, Alexa, no.
Fuck.
Well, this is going to be difficult.
Yeah. I believe she had trouble during the queer baiting episode, too.
Carefully enunciate.
Yeah. And then in the case of Tara, I feel like you could almost read that character's death as a fridging, because it was very much about Willow's storyline.
Right.
Yeah.
Fridging is a lot of these things can easily walk in from bury your gaze trope into fridging trope, because it does set it up.
Which is kind of interesting when you put it that way, but not.
I mean, Joss Whedon said that he was going to have Willow go into her storyline of Dark Willow, regardless who she was with. He was going to fridge whoever.
He was going to fridge anybody.
He was going to do it.
You know what's so fun? I'm just going to be honest, like, in the podcast right now, where I am just having trouble, like, articulating all this stuff because I feel like there's 300 things I want to say at once. Like, to your point about them being side characters, this is the issue with greater representation and good representation, and what's needed with queer representation on TV is that because where we're at now, like, the progression that we have made since the article I read, starting from, the 1800s to now, is that we are in a time where everything is more accepted, and that we are in a place where TV has an ability to create stories where people can see themselves and to, like, normalize everything in the way that everything should be. It's an amazing tool for that kind of thing. And I think that where we're still at is that you have most of your queer characters on TV in secondary roles. And when we are in the era of TV that we are in now, which, Vera, you kind of this is what pinged in my brain when you started talking about Joss, is that starting in the 90s and then going in through the 2000s, now you just have so much TV that tries to be edgy and that pushes boundaries and that is violent. And that one of, like, the Joss things to do at the time was like, oh, it's so crazy. He just kills anyone all the time. Anyway, oh my God, it's so shocking. Whoa. And, like, and that is a horrible byproduct of the fact that we don't have enough stories where queer women are in the lead roles, or queer people like Xena is. And of course, Xena is very complicated because subtext, not subtext, canon, what is it? Just queer entirely, just because it's not defined, etc., etc. But that is why you end up with something like the gigantic autostraddle list that came out in 2016 of every single character who had been killed throughout time on TV, because you feel like you have these characters who are in the, like, more expendable positions, and that sucks.
It does suck.
It sucks.
Yeah, I felt like that was. Obviously this issue is bigger than any one idea, but my big takeaway from Bury Your Gaze at the time was just like, oh, it is frustrating that we just don't have queer characters in lead roles.
Right.
Because so many of these characters are killed simply because they are, in some sense, seen as disposable.
Right.
They can be killed.
Right. We're not in a place, like I was mentioning in the article, like, we're not in a place anymore where queer authors, say in the 50s, writing pulp novels, or, like, writing these stories with these endings where queer characters get killed. Just that's because, like, the only way these stories could get published. Like, we're not in that time period anymore. So the fact that this is still happening is bananas. Like, and it is to do with the fact that, yes, we need more stories like a Xena where people are in lead.
Yeah,
role.
it's just showing a blind spot in the conversation about representation, because I think so many, especially straight creators, feel like, oh, if I just, check that box, tokenism, like put in a queer character somewhere, people will be happy, and then I can do with that character whatever I want, including kill them off when it suits my straight characters. I mean, that, I think, is what really bothered people about Lexa's death in The 100, is that it felt like, well, this serves the story of everybody else, so let's just do it, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and like I said, the difference there is that it actually does play in very specifically to the plot points.
Well, on The 100?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about my experience with the 100.
Please.
Because it's the closest thing that I could think of to, like, how the fans who were so hurt by the Xena finale felt. Like, while, rewind, as you know, I watched it, I liked it, I thought it was amazing. Yeah, the Xena finale, yeah. And so then for the episode in the 100, like, I knew that Alicia Debnam-Carey got a new job on Fear the Walking Dead. I was watching Fear the Walking Dead. We weren't watching it yet, obviously.
But you were excited to watch it.
Yes, because Kim Dickens is on it. Was on it. Spoilers.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry.
We didn't trigger warn for that.
But anyway, so when you find out that a character that is not a main character but a side character, but has the potential, like, for instance, if she didn't get a job, I probably believe she would have been made, like, series regular or whatever in the next season. Who knows where that story would have gone.
She would have been almost a co-lead.
It is clear that her story was like that thing where they started it off and then it was like, ooh, something's happening here. We're into this. And then we're, like, going with it. And then we're really liking it, so we're giving it more and more attention, more and more story. It could have been going who knows where if she had stayed. She didn't stay. She got a new job. She's going to be a lead somewhere else. Great. Clearly, that character was going to be killed off. In my opinion, watching TV for however many years I watched TV, that is a character who's going to be killed off. You know what?
It should be said, much like Xena, Lexa lived in a violent world, a dangerous world. There was always this threat that something bad was going to happen to her.
Yes.
She was a leader who was trying to change her
exactly.
people.
And the people weren't into it.
The people were not into it.
There was all these troubles, et cetera, et cetera. But as a person who watches television...
No recent or upcoming games for that team.
Oh, stop.
Stop it, Alexa!
But as a person who watches TV for however many years, you know certain formulas, right? So a big character death happens in the finale. And we knew from, like, filming things that she was in the finale, right? So there's certain expectations. And then, meanwhile, Jason Rothenberg, who's, like, the show lead...
This is straight out of the Rob Tapert playbook.
Yeah. Right. So we'll do Rob's
We should talk about Rob's
quotes.
as well.
But, yeah, he was all, like... on social, being like, guys, I'm gonna check out this episode in the middle of the fucking season. Oh my god, big one coming up for you Klexas. Oh, so exciting.
And also saying things like, this is such a big season for you Klexas.
Yeah, so huge.
Making it sound like that fan base should be in it for the long haul.
Now, meanwhile, there was definite huge ship wars happening, and, like, I have to say, as Team Klexa, I was, like, getting, like, all right, we're winning. We're winning this fucking thing. Look at this show.
And not only that, you were like, wow, I can't believe I'm winning.
I know, because my shit never wins, really. But, like, I was like, oh my god, this is, like, actually happening. Because, like, yeah, Clark was never, anything but, like, what you would call like a cis lady until she wasn't, until Lexa came along. And still our little heart. But anyway... there you go, being, like, prepped for this big episode. I had to work very, like, early or something, or very late. I taped it. I got up at, like, 7 a.m. to watch it, and I was so excited. And then, so it was good shit. It was happening. They hooked up. It was all beautiful. And then Lexa died. Aww. And I was like, I was shocked and appalled. I mean, again, that she died, I was not expecting it then, okay? Yeah. I was expecting it in the finale.
And it's in an episode where they have just had sex for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're on the high for that, and she's literally doing her, like, walk of shame from the sex scene, and then she gets killed.
It's
like, no.
Not a walk of shame.
Well, whatever.
A walk of glory.
You know what I mean. Same outfit, that thing.
And yeah, she much like Tara in Buffy is basically shot by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Tara
It is
thing.
a meaningless death.
Tara was really good. That whole Seeing Red is an amazing episode.
Yeah, there's good things in 13 too. Like the performances are amazing to watch.
Sure. Oh God, especially as she dies. Holy shit. Amazing acting.
I know. And I really want us to though be cognizant that those two plots really do the trope.
Yeah.
Regardless of like where, like the story for like Willow goes after and all these things and like
right.
Stuff can be both bad and interesting at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, a trope is just a trope. It's a pattern.
It does just like literally walk into and there's so many others that are just even that were the same year as Lexa, I think, that are or similar. But not maybe necessarily even the same. But just as I think it's important to note that those ones like really did this.
Yeah.
Like
it's
very
and in both cases the writers of the episode said I had no idea that this was a trope. And you have to hit like 7 story beats to fit that trope. You outline them, Katie. So like the fact that both of them basically do, let's put these characters together, let's have them have a nice scene together after a period of being apart or having never been together in the first place. Have this
that's worse.
glorious high followed by this immediate death.
And it was so shocking. And honestly, like I was so like I spent the day listening to like Clexa fan mixes, all like upset just because I was denied more episodes of this until the finale where I thought I was gonna die. But it was the closest thing I thought I could like feel like I was like that's what they must have felt like. The shock of it or whatever. I guess if you didn't expect a death of your big hero to happen in the finale.
Didn't expect because had been, and I think we mentioned this previously, that with the interaction that Rob and Co had with the Xena fan base, he did say that they weren't going to kill Xena. He said it.
Robert. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, he lied, which I think...
And this is very early internet, early fandom, like protect your story kind of thing. Or maybe he changed his mind too. It's I don't know exactly where he started saying that and if it was
He gave the interview in December or January, so it is actually possible that he could
I was protecting the story. Yeah.
Changed his mind in the week.
Wasn't it RJ who convinced him?
RJ convinced
maybe
him.
At that point he literally wasn't going to do it, and then RJ convinced him.
I think that is possible, and I mean, I don't think Rob has ever clarified that timeline, which is fine. I'm sure to a certain extent he stands by his decision to kill Xena, and I don't think he wants to get into the doubts he had about doing it because it makes his position looks weaker. But it's very clear that he made a mistake, and I think it is a mistake that some showrunners have learned from, but others not so much.
Still doing it, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, Rothenberg himself has not with like a queer character, but continued to do like literally that thing. These two characters have sex for the first time. I kill them. That one of them gets killed. Continues.
Yeah, and not only that, but putting out misleading statements to your fan base.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I think is part of the fandom's, the Xena fandom's rage was the feeling of being manipulated and deliberately kind of attacked.
Yeah.
That was part of the reaction.
Because you have, number one, you have that going on, I called it meta textually, that's not correct. In real life, you have the people in charge of the story telling you that this story beat isn't going to happen. And then
promising to protect you, and then being like, I actually don't care about protecting you.
And then also in the ways that we did talk about the finale already, but also then the broadcast version is narratively very mean. I think that it is very mean.
It is.
I do. As much as I
like
the
last minute.
As much as I do like the finale and I do find it satisfying, the way that plays out is a trick. It's a trick. There's no other word for it. It like the last second, she's like, whoop. And then it's over, and you're like, oh, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not cool. It's not cool. So that is why we kept stressing the director's cut and stuff. But yeah, so it's very very clear, I think, why there was a lot of a very specific rage on that part.
Yeah.
And maybe if the finale was slightly more successful, like I think Livy said, like if it was more of a sure success, then maybe the rage would have been slightly less. But I still think it would have been there because there's no getting around the fact that they did kill Xena.
Right.
Which is just the problem, I think, at the core of this thing. Like, I do feel like for some viewers, regardless if it was the most perfectly written thing ever, I do think that people would still hate it. And I think that comes from this, just like being denied like a good ending, or like a happy ending, excuse me, for Xena and Gabrielle. When people saw Hercules and Aeolus
Right, I was just gonna
walking
bring that
off
up.
into the sunset. But that was a different show, telling a way different story.
And they were like canceled as well.
Right, I think it was a little unexpected.
It wasn't like
they had
their
a
big,
shortened final season.
And also they like literally fought like a Gumby monster in that episode.
Oh boy.
Like that's like way worse than Edoshia Hawk. Like
it's true. That is finally
he
found something worse than
it was
Edoshia
like a
Hawk.
Gumby monster mixed with that thing that makes the arms in the parking lot.
But yeah, that actually is an important point to make. You know, the difference between the Xena finale and the Hercules finale, because then one of the other criticisms that people level at the Xena finale is that it's anti-feminist. Mm-hmm. That, you know, why is it that the male hero gets to walk off into the sunset with his lover / best friend?
Just bros.
And that, but when you have the female hero, she is brutally murdered.
But her show is way more successful in the long run.
It was just telling such a much more complex story.
A show
I have a hard
about
time.
violence.
Yes.
And about, you know, just violence and the cycle of violence and all of these.
Hercules being a more kind of like children's show, let's just be real, because it was on before, so hence like the kiddie. I mean, everybody can watch all of these. These are family hour for everyone. But like there was a certain maturity to Xena that Hercules did not have.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's like you can't really flay him or whatever happens to him in
Right,
the myth.
yeah, it's interesting then to go back to the mythic sources, and Hercules' death is like so brutal and horrible.
Oh my God.
He's like slowly poisoned to death through his skin by a poison cloak that his wife gives him.
Yeah.
And it like eats his skin off.
Amazing.
His muscles.
Oh no, his big strong man muscle.
Oh no.
And then he asks to be immolated because it's too painful.
Oh my God. This is like misandry.
That was not going to happen on Hercules.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think that's actually opening up a really important point, which is so many of Greek heroes, but then also just heroes in general, die heroic deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, that too is a trope.
Yeah.
And I do feel like Xena conforming to that trope pleases me in that it's actually really rare for a female character to have that kind of ending. You know,
I think I said that as much in
Yeah.
the finale. Like, you do not see a female lead go through the shit that Xena goes through in that finale, or in general in that show.
Yeah.
There's no, like, it's not the same.
And this is also, I think, going back to another criticism that people have about the violence, particularly in Friend in Need, is that calling it misogynistic, because, like, oh my God, they cut off Xena's head and then showed us her body. I feel like I did not like that shot and did not need that shot to be in there, but at the same time, I kind of have respect for them, that they were just like, here's our hero, this happened to her, straightforward, there you go, that's it. Like, you know, this is part of the life she led, and here is her body. I feel like they were not treating that character with kid gloves, and
No.
I appreciate that as a woman. I'm sort of like, yeah.
I personally don't like those because I can see the CGI and I don't like it. It didn't look realistic enough.
I didn't need to see it twice.
That's what we didn't need to see it at all, just because your mind gets the picture from her legs swaying. But Rob was really worried that people wouldn't get that that's what happened, even though like the next shot is like her head in a little platter. Like it makes sense to me, but I just didn't like it because of the CGI, not because it was anti-feminist or whatever.
I also think one important difference between Xena and Hercules is that Hercules really is like a traditional square-jawed hero who does the right thing all the time, whereas Xena is very much more in this almost like, you know, Western, and I mean like the American West trope of the, you know, cowboy with the dark past, the anti-hero. I mean, I think it might be a little misleading to call Xena herself an anti-hero because she is mostly doing good things in her present-day self. But I think she is veering more towards the anti-hero, like, part of the scale than a Hercules is.
Right.
And it's so rare to have an anti-heroine. Like, it's very hard to list them.
Her name is Cersei Lannister.
Some people would call her a villain.
Like,
dude.
No.
Sorry.
But like, no. But
Daenerys
Targaryen. Hey!
now you're talking about 15 years in between.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, of course things can be more, like when people start talking about that kind of stuff that we're talking about with like feminism, and Xena will get into it, but and even with like Bury Your Gaze that we're talking about and stuff, like there's 15 years between Xena and Lexa, and you need to put this show in its place where like some not put it in its place, but like contextualize it in the sense that like, yeah, can this show that we love be more progressive? Like, can it be more feminist? Can it be more gay? Probably all of those things.
Gay. Yeah, be more gay.
More gay.
Remember the Be More Gay song? Be more gay.
But sometimes
I don't actually remember how it went.
Everybody
Sorry,
be more
Katie.
gay. Oh, throwback.
I know. I maybe did it on purpose. Now I forget what I was saying. No, but like I do think though that sometimes the simple thing is what's so great about it. Like seeing a female lead in this situation
be murdered just like a male lead.
I don't know. I think
Yes.
sometimes that's like
Feminism.
cool.
That's feminism.
No, I don't know. I think you can always complicate things super intensely. Like you're saying, like these people think such and such is misogynist or whatever about the ending. But I don't know. Sometimes like you're like, I haven't seen this before, and I haven't seen this with female leads, and that in itself is progressive. And then it's up to things that come after to build upon it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't mean to like slight the show in any way or say that it's like not progressive enough or what have you. It was made when it was made.
And it's
Right.
made by the people who made it, who have their limitations.
Yeah.
And are almost entirely white men.
Almost entirely straight
Except
white
for
men.
you, Liz Friedman. I owe you.
Who wrote all my favorite episodes. Gosh, I wonder if there's a correlation there.
But, you know, Liz wasn't there for the finale.
no, she
Chris
wasn't.
Manheim wasn't there for the finale.
No, Liz did the
but
Gumpy. Hercules Gumpy.
Anyway.
Oh my God.
Can we go back to the autostraddle list? Because there's a really fun
Oh my
factoid
God.
about it.
Yes, please. Let's.
Yes. So wait, just to rewind, this is a list made from the 2016 Fallout.
Yeah.
So about Bury Your Gaze.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like a big thing that was going around the internet. It was in March of 2016, and Autostraddle, the site, put together a list. And as of now, when I'm looking at it, it says all 208 dead lesbian and bisexual characters on TV and how they died. So this is sort of going back to the broader idea of representation on TV versus like the individual story of Xena, and like does Xena like count on this list? And Xena factors hugely in the introduction to this very, very long list. It is amazing. And it is because when the list was originally published, there was a sort of, well, I'll read it. There was basically a knock to the show in the intro, and then every single comment on the article just became like, you forgot Xena, you need to put Xena. So Xena wasn't on this list. And of course, as we know, and as we've been talking about for 3 years, the show itself, having been in the like subtext and coding space, maybe perhaps does not like for some people translate as being like a canon queer show, even though we have argued in the past as well that because of its lack of definition, it's actually the most queer show ever made. However, this is what is at the beginning of the autostraddle list. They're kind of, the author is talking about like what characters made the list, blah, 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 blah. And then there's this part where it goes, nor is subtext on this list. Because we're not going to give Xena showrunners queer character credit for a character they refused to make openly queer when she was really so obviously queer, you know? And so that was originally there. And it's like, when you're in Xena fandom, and I think when you read stuff about Xena, this is like kind of the frustrating area where this kind of stuff comes up a lot. And to me, it's a signal that people, number one, either only watch the show like cursorily, haven't seen it in a very long time, and then also don't know anything about how it was made.
Right.
You don't know anything.
Yeah. It's speaking from a place of ignorance for sure.
And so then immediately after that sentence, there's a bracket, and it says... ETA.
I'm sorry.
So edited to add. Okay. I've added Xena after doing further research. So
watching an episode of Xena.
I think that the further research is actually more into the production.
Okay.
I'm just surmising, but it feels like the statement was like, I'm not giving the people who made the show any fucking credit because they fucking refused to make them
They're basically
gay.
calling it queer baiting.
Yeah.
Which
if
you listen to our minisode, you know.
Xena isn't.
I've added Xena after doing further research, and because if one more commenter takes up space on this thread, a thread I'm using to find more characters to add, and also to engage with thoughtful/funny readers who have opinions and feelings. Quote, to tell me that I, quote, forgot Xena without reading this introduction, I will become the 200th dead lesbian, and the cause of death will be, quote, walked off a cliff with a commenter in her arms, murder-suicide, end quote. But Xena will be the one and only inclusion based on subtext.
Nice.
Wow.
So that speaks to just the power of to me, the power of how strong the feelings are about this finale, and then also to the power of like how very much this show is a queer show and iconic. And as such, like I'm sad that it had to be like fought onto this terrible list. Like on one hand, I'm like, don't get on this list. Why are you? What?
Xena belongs on all the lists.
Yeah.
So it's never on any list.
Yes,
so I'm
never
like,
on lists.
So I'm like, okay, well, they didn't want to put it on this list, and then fandom had to like fight for it to be on this terrible, terrible list. And so like that just shows you like how strong these feelings are, and like just it sucks seeing this character in this horrible, like if you just scroll through it, you can really just see how fucking miserable representation on TV is. And there's like not a lot more to say about that except to like advocate for better. However, for me, I want, as a person watching TV who loves all kinds of stories, and appreciates the story that like Xena told on that like micro level or what have you of the show, like I think that show earned it. And it's very clear. I love tragedies. I love drama. Like, I love this kind of stuff. So, like, I want to have, like, my cake and eat it, too. Like, what... I guess, struggle with loving it so much when there's so much shit, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, so it's, like, it's just one of those things where, like... I don't know, in my lifetime, are we going to get to, like, the place where anything can be anything in any kind of story... Because I want these kind of amazing stories that Xena is telling. And I want women and queer women to be able to have these kind of stories and these kinds of endings. Because it's great. I love angsty fucking fiction. And I love complicated stories. And I love complicated characters. So it's like, it's really hard to just kind of, I don't know. It's a hard place to be in, I think.
Yeah, I think, maybe we haven't talked about this enough, but, just the complexity of being a voice in a fandom and feeling like, that your opinion is kind of not being acknowledged by a larger fan base. Like, so much of these conversations are about representation. What happens when you sort of within your fan base are not represented? The people who felt like, moved by the Xena finale. And, if, say, Gabrielle was your favorite character and you kind of liked that she goes off on the end, this wiser, stronger person.
Yeah.
You know, that just, you don't see conversations about that in the fandom. You feel like you're not allowed to feel that way. And, like, that doesn't seem fair either. That's making fandom a kind of harsh and difficult place for people to be in.
Well, are you also talking about, like, just people, like how we started this episode discussing how, like, people keep their opinions quiet because everybody in the room hates it so much.
Yeah.
So it's like you feel like, oh, you gauge a person in conversation. Oh, you like Xena? I like Xena. Oh, but that finale. Oh, okay. That finale.
Well, yeah, but
Not in Smile, not in Smile.
Yeah, okay.
That's sort of what I feel like we've been talking about this for, like, 45 minutes now, because it's so important and it's so painful and it's so, like, that's what I feel almost uncomfortable with when I'm, like, expressing that I like the finale. It's because, like, me saying that I like it, I don't want it to feel like it's making the opinion that you as another viewer felt genuinely hurt because of your sexuality and think, like, it's just the worst. It's just the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst. And I don't want anybody to like, I don't know, feel like their feelings are invalid or anything like that. And I don't want my feelings to be invalid either as a person watching it the way I watch it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hoping, and like, for people listening to us, like, if you had that reaction and now 20 years later you're listening to Xena Warrior podcast, I hope this at least can, I don't know, be a kind of catharsis. Because, like, I don't know, I hate and have felt hurt by media. Yeah. And, like, sometimes when you hear someone talk about it who, like, got something out of it, like, it makes me feel better about it. Because you're like, oh, okay, like, it's possible, it's possible for for the characters to live on and still, like, be a positive influence on people.
Yeah. I love finding the whoosh articles that are kind of positive because they're so unexpected. There's so many that aren't. I kind of want to, I keep feeling like the way that I'm talking, I'm sort of speaking about, like, oh, queer viewers watching the show hated it. That's fucking not true. Like, we're sitting here talking about it, and also it's just not true. It's just not true. There's no, like, monolithic view of the finale. So I want to make that clear, too, that I'm not saying that was what every single person in the fandom thought.
But I have not encountered anyone who loudly screams that they liked something when the majority of people around them just react, like, literally the first thing that's out of their mouths is like, fuck this finale, or something like that. And, like, the fact that they have the power to say that, like, at least in my experience, renders me quiet. Yeah. Like, I do not speak otherwise.
I agree. It's hard to, I think, engage on that level when it's just coming from such a place of, like, deep hurt. Right. Like, you're not, and vitriol and anger. It's much more difficult to just want to be like, oh, I like it, because it makes you feel like kind of an asshole, to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? Just to be honest. Yeah.
I guess the difference is, we're not trying to, like, defend the finale against people who are hurt by it. Like, I think it's possible to, like, appreciate something without it being, like, a struggle for dominance, because both of these reactions are valid. Yeah. And both of them are just true. Like, I think, the finale is not a piece of shit. It's clearly a very well-made piece of television.
Totally.
So, I mean, I feel like just on every level you see that these are actors doing an amazing job. It's a director doing an amazing job. The production design, like, so much about this finale is great. I showed it to my sister, who does not watch Xena, and she was just like, wow, that was some pretty incredible television. And I was like, yes, okay. Someone who just comes in from outside, watches this, having no idea what's going on, it's just like, that was well made. Yeah. You're like, thank you. This is just an objective reality that we can all agree upon.
I think a lot of people watching at the time were that way as well, too. Just kind of coming in going, ooh, I watched this show casually. That was fun.
That was cool.
Wow.
I want to just thank the people who have told us that, they hadn't seen this episode since it aired, and have now watched it and listened to the podcast about it. I think that's very brave of you, and we really appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, even if your opinion is not altered, I think making
just like
making
even
the choice to
even
go back
confronting
and
it at this point. Yeah.
So I want to move on
Yeah.
to some of the other problems.
People don't just hate it because they killed Xena because her and Gabrielle were in a relationship. People hate it for many, many reasons.
Well, one thing that we saw on social media and elsewhere is people saying,
That bitch Akemi.
well,
Yeah.
oh my god, yeah, sorry, put a pin in what I was about to
No, we
say.
can't
for a
pin
second.
things anymore.
Pin them.
But yeah, that
Quickly unpin it.
I have to say that has been, even though we sort of said in our part 1 podcast, you know, we knew that the fandom disliked Akemi. It was a
Shocking.
little bit shocking to
Shocking.
see the level of hatred that the character got on our social when
Yeah.
we were discussing her for part 1.
Absolutely.
Just seeing the people saw the gifts and were like, "Fuck you!"
I do think, again, like a lot, like I feel like basically 99% of the criticisms that people have of the finale in the end come back to Xena dying.
They do.
People blame
They do.
Akemi for Xena's death, so of course she sucks. I really do think like that if you go back and watch the episodes, the character is interesting.
She's so fascinating.
Like and well acted, and I feel like I feel crazy because people talk about how terrible she is and how terrible the acting is, and I'm just
I
like,
want-
what are you seeing?
Where's my Akemi spinoff?
I don't understand. She's
know.
cool. And
Like,
yeah.
Michelle, she could totally be going to XenaCons and stuff. She's in the
Yeah.
same amount of episodes as other people
Who
who go to
do,
XenaCons.
yeah.
I would totally be like, yeah, I mean, I don't like meeting celebrities, but I would be like totally on board, or like people who are
Yeah, I would
like, going to
specifically
these
meet her
things.
to be like, "You're so good."
But yeah, but I'm just like,
She was a kid. She was
And
like
then-
17, 18
And
years
Then
old.
she was on Fear the Walking Dead with Alicia
Yeah.
Debnam Carey. Oh,
and Kim Dickens.
oh.
I think she's just such a fascinating character. I think we all agree. Yeah, and it's just, I feel like it's very common to just see a lot of just rage because
Yeah.
she's so instrumental in the end of Xena.
One thing that I remember saying back in our discussion of the debt, we were talking about how do you portray in this show about 2 white female characters, if you bring in a woman of color, like her story should feel as fully developed as the leads. And I feel like that was true of Lao Ma. That's part of why that character is so successful, is you feel like she sort of has life beyond the scenes you see her in. Like, that woman lived a life.
Yeah.
She was doing her own thing. Xena happened to be a part of her story, and she happened to be a part of Xena's, but it's not like she was just there to prop up Xena as the hero. And I think that is absolutely true of Akemi as well. That even though we don't know very much about what happened to her before she met Xena, you really do have the sense of this girl on her own quest for vengeance and then for absolution. And Xena happens to be a part of it, just as she is a part of Xena's story. And I know that people have this sort of frustration that Xena ends up almost like being subsumed by Akemi's quest, you know, that Xena kind of obeys the rules of Akemi's culture in deciding to stay dead. But you were saying, Katie, that there's an article that talks about that as being, in a way, really transgressive, to have your, white Western hero kind of decide to obey these Eastern rules of being and letting a woman of color, in a way, like, decide her fate.
Yeah, it's from a book called Athena's Daughters. And then the author of the article is Kathleen Kennedy, who I believe wrote other articles that I've mentioned.
And
But she does not run Star Wars.
She did not produce Star Wars.
We make it every time, and it's always funny.
But yeah, I do think that's really interesting layer to look at, because I know that a big sort of thing with the finale is that people don't like that Xena gets caught in this like patriarchy and these really intense rules.
Right, this vengeance-based system of justice. That she has
Exactly.
to stay dead to avenge the deaths of Higuchi.
Right. But the article is really interesting. In the end, for me, it isn't about that stuff, and it isn't about those like ideas of being like, oh, this is so against what the show has been saying the whole time. Like, when I'm watching it, I see like 3 really interesting female characters who each have their own like journeys and quests that they're on. And then we talked about like we see them come together, and it basically like a threesome
Yep.
scene in the
It happens.
in the finale.
It happens.
And then Xena's like heroic choice is to help her friend, who's another woman who is also looking for some of the same stuff that Xena is, and that's like her ultimate choice. It's not any of this like I must punish myself to avenge my past and blah. That's not it for me. It's really not. I think that's on the surface, but I don't think that's what's happening. I really do think that she's just making this like beautiful heroic choice to do the right thing and to do it for 40,000 souls, but then
Akemi.
also for Akemi.
Yeah, the foremost of
I know
those
that's
souls.
hard because she's not Gabrielle.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's cool. It's like that's not anti-feminist to me.
No, I agree.
Whatever those criticisms were.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that like just looking at the cast list for this episode, the three major roles are women, and basically the men are all in very small supporting roles. I mean, we complain that Yodoshi is such a non-entity, but in a way that's nice when you don't want like your male antagonist to be taking over the show if he's too impressive and interesting.
So impressive as that hawk.
So yeah, I do feel like in the hatred of Akemi, people are kind of missing an important aspect of why the finale is successful. And why it really should not just be dismissed as anti-feminist or even misogynistic. Oh, so back to my pin. One other criticism that we saw on social is this idea that Xena's afterlife is now messed up because of Akemi. Yeah. Which I honestly hadn't even realized was a problem until people were pointing it out. Like I was
don't see how that is in any way true.
Xena says to Akemi, like, I'll see you again one day, which sounds very vague and very distant.
Yes.
I don't get the sense that now she is trapped in the Japanese afterlife and will no longer be reincarnated and will no longer see Gabs again, and the Xena scrolls are not canon, and every other episode that follows.
Oh my god, she literally could be like Harry and Annie or whatever. Those people go to Japan and clap her hands and hear the
voice of the kami.
Yeah, the kami, and it would be Akemi, and there's her seeing her again like one day. You know what I mean?
It struck me as a goodbye, not as a okay, we're roommates now in the afterlife.
In the sitcom.
I did talk about some stuff where that one of the interesting things about the show is the way that it deals with religion in the various locations that Xena and Gabs go to. So like stuff is very literally true due to the nature of Xena being a fantasy and probably supernatural. And like in Greece, the gods are real. They walk amongst them. They talk to Aphrodite and Ares. They're there.
They can apparate.
It's very much part of their lives there. They go to India, and again, everything about Hinduism is real. They talk to Krishna. Everything is...
Maybe they become Kali.
Maybe they become Kali, and they shouldn't.
Just needed to throw a coin in. Actually, I should have been throwing coins in all along. I'm sorry. Here's just like $10.
And everything, because of the nature of the show, is like very reality based. It's not like you're in the real world going like, what religion is all the religions are that's a very complicated topic. So the sort of idea that people have written about that, like Xena goes to Japan and thus because she dies in Japan is sort of locked in to the geographical location in which she was killed, and then therefore everything else is not true because now she goes to whatever would happen to you if you're in Japan. I guess they're in Rome, so then they went to Catholic hell. I don't know why, just because Eli kind of existed at the time.
But
I said Christian hell, heaven and hell, not Catholic. I said that because I'm Catholic. But
what's that thing? What's the thing? The way that time works. Like in Lost or whatever, where everything happened because of how we already saw
whatever happened.
Yeah, because of what we already saw the fact that they live in the 90s as them reincarnated.
Harry and
means that Annie. It's gonna be fine. Like, it's gonna happen.
I certainly don't
Yeah.
think those episodes were made invalid because of this one line about
It's
see you
also
one
fiction.
day,
Yeah.
Akemi.
This is kind of where I kind of put my foot down and go, it's fiction. Like,
It's fiction, Becky.
It does not, like, okay, even if the finale did say she's stuck in Japan, like, heaven or whatever, like, it doesn't need to be true for you because you saw all this other stuff. But it doesn't say that. Like, it does not in any way, shape, or form say that. So I don't understand why that was a criticism. I really don't. Like,
What about if Gabs has her ashes, so she's like taking them out of Japan, so her,
wherever
little
the ashes
spirit-
goes, Xena goes to the
goes
next.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm in Egypt afterlife.
nobody
now.
can take away jocks or farting as being
wild.
the chronological end of Xena Warrior Princess. Anyway.
Okay, so here's another big topic, which is just how are we meant to read the final message about redemption? Xena dies at the end and is redeemed. Does that mean that the only way to be redeemed is to die?
No.
Okay, next question.
It's interesting because I was thinking about the finale of Buffy, and I was thinking
Yeah.
about Anya, and Anya is a very good analog for Xena.
That's actually a really
And
good
she did
point.
die.
Yeah, I
She
mean,
did, yeah.
the thing
That's 'cause
is,
Joss likes to kill, like, secondary characters.
Yes, that's
true.
also true.
But this is also going back to my point about anti-heroes and anti-heroines, which is often when you have these characters who have morally complicated lives, their death is more likely to happen, and that's in part because of this idea of justice and you wanting those characters to have peace. And I think Anya dies in part because she feels like that is something she needs to do. She wants to put her life on the line for her friends, and it's possible she will die, and then does. And I think for Xena, that's how she's been a hero all along, is that she is constantly putting her life on the line. Maybe it's coming from a slightly perverse place of like feeling like she needs to be punished, but eventually it's not.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like, to remember that in the finale, it really is at that point just her trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
It's not like, oh my God, I'm bad. Sorry.
Damn it.
Sorry, Eliza Dushku fans. It always comes back.
That was the big one that we had read. I think, and very specifically put like that the message of the show had been saying the whole time that what was correct or right about Xena's wants for forgiveness or redemption, that the show was saying that like it was always more important for her to be in the world saving people.
We have a really good kind of explication of that idea from Jackson Uppercoat,
who thank you for your site, because it's a huge monumental site for us throughout this show.
We use his site so much. He has a great collection of scans from the Chakram newsletter and other places. Like, he's just been instrumental for our research. So if you happen to ever hear this, Jackson, like, we are indebted to you. I'm actually going to read not from one of his many scans, but from his own thoughts about the finale. He says the following. While many fans hate the ending because it cruelly separates Xena and Gabrielle, my personal problem with Xena's death is that these Japanese rules fly directly in the face of what the series and Xena had been telling us about the nobility of doing good to counteract the evil in her past. And what a waste death and or imprisonment would have been. Sure, 40,000 people dead is a high count, but what about the thousands more she could have saved had she continued on fighting? It's noble of Xena, and perhaps makes sense that she would want to stay dead, but it doesn't fit for the series, and that, in my mind, is flawed storytelling. So yeah, like per your point, Katie, I do think people look at episodes like Locked Up and Tied Down and say, oh, well, Xena made this mistake in thinking that imprisonment and taking herself out of the world was going to be helpful. But I mean, that was very much like a single microcosm of justice. Xena went to that particular prison.
Wait a second. A prison of Shock Island?
Shock Island was not the place where she was going to find that kind of redemption. It doesn't mean that that rejecting that whole system of justice, like, was what she was doing. And at the same time, I feel like we get frustrated with conversations where people cite the 40,000 souls, that it becomes this almost numbers game. Like, okay, I could redeem 40,000 people here, but if I live, I might save 180,000. So okay, doing the math. Okay, gonna live. Gonna choose
they
life.
They can just stay. Fuck them.
I do think the numbers don't matter.
The numbers don't matter to me. But I also think, and we talked about this a little bit in that idea of the show, the idea that was expressed in what you just read, being that the show is saying that it's better for her to be in the world and fighting, and that's what it's saying, and not to be dead or punished in that way. I don't think that that's what the show is actually saying, because I think when you watch 134 episodes of the show and watch the actions of these two characters, that what the show is literally saying at all times, sometimes even in the silliest episodes, is that they do put their lives on the line almost every second of every day because of what they do.
Because of what they believe, because of the greater good.
And that, yes, if they are in the world, they are doing good, but because they are fighting and because they are in a violent world where they find themselves in mortal danger quite often, that they might die doing the right thing and fighting for good. And Xena does, because that's what they do all day, except for when they're having bath time.
Yeah, I feel like there's a danger in this idea of thinking, oh, well, Xena has to stay in the world in order to continue to be this force of good. And that's that you're sort of saying that Xena's life is then more important than other people's lives because she's this force of good. She saves people. It becomes this almost idea of exceptionalism. I must stay alive. Oh, I'm sorry to hear, Akemi and friends, that you are doomed. But you see, I create so much good in the world that I must continue on. It's just, it is very contrary to this whole idea of selflessness, which I think is such a factor in Xena's decision making. Is to reject the self and to decide I'm going to do the thing that's right, even if it means losing things that are important to me.
Hear, hear.
Hey, Liv, didn't you have a pin for Breaking Bad for some reason?
What? Oh my god!
You just really want me to spoil Breaking Bad for people.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I guess that goes back to my point about anti-heroes, which is, again, often in stories of anti-heroes, they die, and that makes you sort of feel better about their arc. You could argue that it's lazy storytelling. People dead. For Walter White, who dies at the end of Breaking Bad, people felt that, that exonerated him from his darker and more kind of difficult choices. But it has to be said that Xena is basically mirroring that. She was a character who had made these horrible decisions, and you find out about more and more of them as the show goes on. And I think it's, again, to me it feels a little transgressive to have a female character kind of as the Walter White. Right. Who in the end has to die, and dies in a way that you feel was on her terms and that she feels released by. Yeah. And I think that's true for Walter White. Nice.
I want to watch the whole 10 years ago Xena that's not just flashbacks, that's actually the Xena Breaking Bad.
Oh my god, I'd love it.
Just
Warlord Xena.
Only her
adventures.
Journey from Cortez to,
oh my god.
It stops right before Hercules.
What if that was the reboot?
Oh my god.
Whoa, yikes. I'd watch it.
I would watch it.
Walter White is a villain.
Yeah.
I don't like Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Are you not a fan of the whole idea of anti-heroes? Is that a little bit
I like anti-heroes, and I think he's part of it, and I think that he's more of a straightforward villain.
And Jesse,
Jesse
then becomes the hero in the same way that Gabrielle in many ways is the more traditional hero.
Please don't talk to me about him.
Anyway,
Jesse. That is literally a face I can't even look at.
But I don't know Breaking Bad well enough to make an informed.
I just remember Breaking Bad was happening around the same time the Game of Thrones was happening, and everybody hated Cersei Lannister but loved Walter White, and I thought that's bullshit misogynist shit.
I think
that is bullshit misogynist shit.
It is, absolutely. And I think people loved the Breaking Bad finale because it kind of was a bit of a fantasy for specifically dude viewers who loved this character and didn't want to, like,
wanted him
engage
to
with
die
Walter
a
White
hero.
more complicated fashion.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't like Breaking Bad. It's like one of the best TV shows of all time in the canon of TV, but it's not my jam.
It isn't really mine
I much
either.
preferred Vince Gilligan's work on The X-Files.
Yeah. But yes.
Okay, so I feel like kind of the major question then that now we all have to wrangle with is, considering how many problems the finale has and the outrage that it has inspired, does its existence ruin the show?
Oh,
No.
Not for me.
The fuck?
No. I think just no. No. I hope not. I hope not.
That's a good one to ask Game of Thrones, but not for me because I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is often a criticism that this is why finales are important to people, because they, for people, can make or break an entire viewing experience. I don't think they should, because it's
agree.
You spend so many happy hours watching that thing. Those hours still exist. It's not like they disappear because of an ending that is not satisfying. And I certainly hope Game of Thrones can recover from the outrage.
There is like a ton of stock put into to endings. It's true, because it's like you're on this journey, and I guess the feeling is that you want it to be all worthwhile and to stick the landing all the time. But for me, I agree, where even if it doesn't stick the landing, it doesn't erase the rest of the show. And I certainly, I don't think Xena, stuck the landing, but I think it landed good.
It stuck it, but then it sort of wobbled around.
It was Carrie Strug's first vault, not the second one.
Yeah, it was that first one.
Where she fucked up her leg.
Yeah.
But still, landed.
Yeah, she landed, but the leg got fucked up.
And I think that's exactly the metaphor we're trying to do. We're trying to say that, the ideas are good, the execution is a hot mess, but I do feel like this was the correct ending for the characters and for sort of the themes of the show,
and the
going
idea
back years.
Going back years. And I think that's what pains me a lot, is that view that it's so fucked up that it went against not only these sort of broader ideas, like we were just talking about, of what redemption means and etc., but just that Xena and Gabrielle are two completely different people that people don't recognize, and that just the entire show was then all for naught, I guess. By the time you get to the end, it's if it's bad, then you think that everything that you saw before doesn't count. It's very strange. But yeah, I think that particular criticism of it just being against the characters really hurts me, and I find also very confusing, because aside from what we've already discussed with the broadcast version and the narrative bits, I think that there's just a huge anger at other stuff. A lot of it comes from just Xena and Gabs not being together and things like that. And
people say that Xena and Gabrielle don't value their relationship enough in the episode, which I think is an odd.
Oh, so strange.
An
the
odd
biggest
criticism.
Line is I had to learn from you. It's just the most beautiful. I just find it strange, because it makes me feel like I live in a bizarro world where I watched a different episode, because I too have been following these characters for 6 seasons, and they did not strike me at all as out of character. So when people turn around and go, "This is out of character, this isn't Xena, this isn't Gabrielle," I'm like, what are you talking about? I really feel that way. I'm like, these are totally them. This is very much these characters, and they're very much doing how the things that they would do. And I don't know about that one.
So over the course of the podcast, we have adopted this phrase, put a pin in it. I think we originally said it in our Sins of the the past podcast.
Probably.
yeah.
It is a thing.
It has a lot of pins in
Yeah.
there.
Because we saw so many echoes with the finale. And in the end, that is, I think, what this phrase means for us. It is, you can see the finale in so many episodes of the show. And we mean that in a positive way. We think the show is coherent. It all fits together, including the finale. And I think even especially in the early episodes, you just really feel like Xena's entire character arc and Gabrielle's are both set up from beginning to end.
Yes.
So we had... We were just planning to go into this great unpinning being like, you know, our pins, just sort of hand wave. There are a lot of them. They're in there.
Yeah.
Go back and listen. And
Sometimes we like unpin them like as we go.
Yeah.
That's
Sometimes
the thing.
we remembered about pins. It must be
Yeah.
said. I think we have at least a 50% unpinning rate.
Yeah.
We remember when we pin something.
And then sometimes we pin stuff that we unpin like within the episode even.
Yes, we actually have often done that.
Yes.
But we never expected in a million years that one of our listeners would be so kind as to go back and listen to 5 seasons worth of Xena Warrior podcasts and make
Yes.
note of every single time we use this phrase, put a pin in it. So Blaine, thank you so much. This is
It's
just
incredible.
an amazing piece of work, and it's so helpful to us.
Yeah.
We are now going to go through the spreadsheet that Blaine has made up for us of all of our pins.
Okay.
What episode they're in, what episode the pin is referencing in the future, and what we actually said about it. So there are all sorts of pins here about various things, some of which were related to other episodes, like Helicon. Vera, you were are in charge of pinning episodes that you felt were eventually going to refer to Helicon. But for the purposes of this discussion, I am only going to read the pins about the finale itself. Mm-hmm. So, going back to season 1, Mortal Beloved, Marcus says to Xena, "I died doing a selfless act. I know you'd do the same." I think
That's good.
that's a good one. We pinned that.
Episode 8.
Episode,
Done.
yeah, there you go. This has been there from the beginning.
Yeah, so much of this has just been embedded in the show from the start.
Here's a beautiful one from Greater Good, which of course is just a huge episode in terms of Gabrielle's arc, and then its title alone.
Oh no!
Introducing these larger questions of what is the circumstance in which you lay down your life. Gabs, while dressed as Xena, wearing Xena's clothes, says, "That's what happens with things you love. Sometimes they leave you."
Baby.
I really feel like, we're going to talk about this very, very shortly, but in Gabrielle's journey, this is a great moment where you really feel like she is like not a baby anymore. Yeah. It's really her first step towards maturity, being able to understand the concept of loss in this very grown-up way. Lots of pins for One Against an Army.
Oh
which
my God.
I think we've basically unpinned them all over the course of Friend in Need, but I think if you're having trouble with the concepts in Friend in Need, going back to One Against an Army really helps. Like we've been saying, we wish that we could have had those conversations between Xena and Gabs about, is this really the moment? Must we do this? Mm-hmm. I feel like we have had that conversation in the show already, and it was One Against an Army. It's there already. We've seen that clash between selfless sacrifice and individual desire. I think One Against an Army expresses that way more beautifully than any other episode. So we had pins for One Against an Army, including Even in Death, I Will Never Leave You.
Which, of course, they echo in the finale. One Against an Army is just one of those ones, too, where, people take things that they say and have a different interpretation.
Right, there's that moment, a moment of weakness for Xena, where she says, well, I'm through with that. I'm through with seeking atonement.
Yeah. I'm done paying for my past mistakes.
That one.
Specifically, but Gabrielle in the finale says, I don't care. And she does care. It doesn't mean it's out of character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's pretty clear that those are moments where the characters themselves are making a mistake.
making a mistake, but also like just very like in character as their feelings for each other.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, you know, your feelings can contradict each other. You can feel like, oh, God, I don't want Xena to do this. I don't want her to die here. And be like, okay, this is what's best for her. And I understand that and respect it, which is exactly what Gabrielle decides to do in the finale.
I like these comments in the Excel that I think are us talking in the One Against an Army, the podcast, that there's this concept of Xena pursuing redemption to make herself feel better, and if that was selfish, and then if there is a right or a better word for her journey going through seasons 4 through 6. And then redemption. You know, as much as, you know, you love in a friend in need, they can be like, "You've redeemed yourself."
I hate it. That's as bad as it's my spine.
Oh shit!
Like, please don't tell us the thing. We know.
But I don't know I don't know what like a right other word is, but I just feel like Xena's whole thing is just to always just be doing the right thing, and she does it.
It's just a central difficulty with you know, doing the right thing. It makes me think actually of The Good Place, which if you haven't seen it, has a great kind of critique of the way the afterlife works. You know, if you are doing good works in this life for a reward, are you doing good works at all? Yeah. And I think, you know, in some places Xena has veered into similar territory. You feel like, is actually her tireless pursuit of this idea of redemption in itself selfish.
And is that kind of tied into people saying like she can do so much better things, like being in the world, like somehow tied to like this like point system? Like, I guess the longer she's alive doing good works, the more points she'll have for her ultimate redemption later on.
But yeah, spoilers I guess for The Good Place, but it will eventually like make that whole point system seem pretty stupid. And this is why we say, like, you know, Xena's redemption can't be a numbers game. It's not about how many good things she does. It's about these choices in the moment, her choosing to do the right thing. And I think her deciding to stay dead is one such choice.
Yes. What else did we say?
You know, it's fun to look at these old pins. We pinned, locked up, and tied down
Crabs Woman.
Many a time because of our love of Crabs Woman. But we also said that the chakram got passed back and forth between Xena and Gabs in that episode.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
It's pretty great. Pretty great to have that there. We've already unpinned this, but I'll remind people that Adventures in the Sin Trade had a very similar situation where Xena makes a choice to save the souls that are stuck in limbo rather than going on and liberating Gabrielle. So she chooses other people over Gabrielle.
There you go.
Is this one of those places too where you kind of like you can kind of throw that criticism like, well, she already did this. Like, not only did she do it in Sierra, but she also did it in Adventures in the Sin Trade, quite specifically saving all of the stuck souls of the Amazons, like who we love, I guess, because we know the Amazons, and it's cool for her to like choose between Gabrielle and like righting that particular wrong in that instance, but not in the finale, I guess. Interesting.
I like this one.
She's made this decision before.
She has. Sort of. And, you know, I think that's like any great symphony. You have these repetitions. You know, the fact that she has made a version of this choice before, and it worked out okay for her then, shows that it's going to work out okay now. She will get Gabrielle back. Like, I don't think her karmic cycle has been disrupted. No. Like, it goes back to that idea of the Mendy from Between the Lines. They're separate but forever connected. They're going to be separated and then reunite, and separated and reunite. Love wins.
Yay!
So speaking of the India arc, we had lots of pins in the way.
What about In the Shoe Fits? You skipped.
Excuse me.
You skipped the pin of If the Shoe Fits, which we pointed out that there's a quote there where it's like, a happy ending is something I'll get or I won't get all on my lonesome. So like Xena's always been very pragmatic and realistic about her life, and that she like may not particularly get a happy ending, you know.
And that she might not want one.
Might not want one. Like, all those comments she would always make about not living very long in the first place.
Yes, that actually, we did not pin that, but that's from the execution from season 2 that Xena ends by being like, people in our line of work don't live that long. This is just, I mean, you can say, oh, like that was like harsh Xena back in the day before, you know, she found this loving relationship with Gabs. But I think it's possible for just both to be true, for her to feel this way about herself and to love Gabs. I think Gabs has helped her to find the right moment where she could do the most good.
I do think that Gabs has, let me rewind. I love that line, and I'm sure that in that episode I was all about it. But I do think it's really interesting to juxtapose it with that one in whatever season where they're trying to settle down with the Amazons.
Domestic.
Yeah, and Xena's like, wow, domesticity is not for her, but she did entertain the idea of like, oh, we'll have this house when I'm too old to do kicks and stuff. Before, she would never even entertain that concept of her.
She wasn't going to be too old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she was always going to be able to do kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
So then we have The Way, which expresses so many of the ideas, I think, that then kind of come to conclusion in the finale. The Way introduces the way of the warrior, which you feel really blends seamlessly into like the samurai and that particular code of honor. And I think it is sort of interesting. You know, we've said like, oh, it's so arbitrary that they go to Japan, but it's kind of nice, I think, to have these warriors with a code of honor, you know, in a moment where Xena herself is going to walk to the end of the path of the way of the warrior. We had pins for what we said was the thesis of the show, how to act when you have these feelings of attachment, or do you detach yourself from them? Like, do you act with love, like a personal love, or this more collective love for all people? Can you turn your love for one person into a love for all people? I thought those were good thoughts back in the day, and they are certainly good thoughts true now. For the finale.
Yeah, like how could they even be doing what they're doing if they didn't do that? You know what I mean? Like, why would they want to be living the lives the way they do?
Gabrielle says to Xena in The Way, I couldn't have understood the power of selfless love if it wasn't for our friendship.
Which is so funny, because they say these things, but they know they've already been acting like it. So it's just sort of like more of a cognizant, intellectual recognition of it versus, you know, and then also the show, like, just writing stuff.
Just needs to call these things out.
Because, again, I'll point out Baby Gabs. That's the first thing she does on the show.
And then the final pin that I want to unpin is from Ides, which actually has a lot of pins, but I'm going to skip over a lot of them. But I think this idea that we put forward there, which is just that, you know, Gabs has been on this path of pacifism, which she calls the way of love. Mm-hmm. But when she actually opens herself up to love, which is her love for Xena, she starts killing people.
Yes.
That actually her way of embodying love is to be a warrior like Xena. And I think that brings you very full circle to the finale. I think the last thing we really want to talk about in our finale roundup, and I feel like this is, for me, at least 50% of why I love the finale, is because of what it does for Gabrielle's story.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's also, in a way, my criticism of the finale, because the finale could have more Gabs in it.
Yes.
Like, I feel like her story in these episodes is so
Instead
amazing.
Instead of that bitch, Akemi.
How dare you?
But, like, yeah, I feel like Gabrielle's parts are so good, you know, seeing her, like, take these final steps in her journey and, in a way, like, make peace with these ideas of violence that she'd been struggling with all along. Mm-hmm. I do feel like in that moment of her facing off with Morimoto, like, you really are seeing her coming into her own, and it's so beautiful.
So good.
And, you know, it's so, like, I see a lot of fans feeling like despair for Gabrielle because she's lost Xena and she's alone, and that last shot of her on the boat talking to the urn,
which we talked about as being so like hopeful and what like good to see.
I think people are afraid for her and upset for her, but like personally for me, I think she's going to be okay.
I do too.
I think this is the entire story of Xena, Warrior Princess, has shown us that Gabrielle will be okay. You go back to greater good. Gabrielle dressed as Xena, saying, this is what happens with things you love. You lose them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't go on and continue to do good in the world.
And we'll probably get into this a little bit, but I do want to say, like, it is part of the story that she becomes a version of Xena, but she isn't Xena. And I saw that as even, like, a criticism, that, like, it wasn't ever supposed to be about Gabrielle becoming Xena. But she doesn't become Xena. She becomes her own person.
Right.
She's not
Yes.
Xena.
She hasn't made the same mistakes as Xena.
Exactly.
And she shouldn't try
Vera
to
was
be
looking
Xena.
at us, though, when you were saying that stuff about her being okay.
Because I had a pin.
Vera.
This was
Let's hear your
a
pin.
pin for our, like, quote unquote big fight, right? Because
yeah.
I remember watching this, like, with you guys, and the way that I came out of that episode was, I was like, oh my god, she is gonna die tomorrow. Like, she cannot.
Yeah.
She cannot be on her own, doing these things on her own. Because
Why? Why do you think
specifically because what happened is that thing where somebody puts in their 2-week notice, and then the person who's like gonna be there next gets like a rush job of like, this is what you do with the job.
No way.
That's what happened in the finale.
No
She was
way.
like, here's the pinch. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. Oh my god. Oh my god.
For years.
We haven't seen Testa in forever.
I think that your point is not taken. I sort of understand.
I just got worried for her.
I understand, because, like, I mean, Xena, again, we kind of had, like, this was that weird conversation I've been having with myself over the course of the last 2 episodes, where it was like, well, Xena is like does all this banana stuff, and
right.
She's like, her relationship with violence is different in the sense that, like, we did talk about one of the complicated factors of her character is that she does take pleasure in it, and that's true.
Yeah.
And also because it's like an action show, but like, and that's fun, but like, she genuinely enjoys the shit out of it. In a way that isn't always true for Gabrielle ever.
I think never true, yeah.
Like, sometimes I think you see her, and this was particularly the problem with Xena being pregnant in season 5. I think there are moments where you do see her having fun in a fight, but it's not, like, the same way that Xena.
It's not the same.
And, like, she doesn't, like, revel in violence. So I think that, like, the person that she becomes in the end is a person who's going to wield the chakram and wield violence as a last resort.
Yeah, like,
or
literal
only when
last
she
resort.
has to. And isn't going to just jump into things in the same way that she would or that Xena would.
Yeah, she'll do stuff her own way.
But, like, to your point that, like, okay, they don't make a huge arc, especially leading up to the finale, about that sort of training situation. Like, you have the whole show is that.
Yes.
So you have to take that into account. You can't just be like, well, why all of a sudden does Xena, like, what would you do? Like,
because we haven't seen that ever before.
And season 5 was complicated because they had their, meta shit going on. Not meta. I keep saying that. They had this real life, like, situation where their lead couldn't do, like, most of the, like,
Kick
fighting.
some stuff.
And they wrote her pregnancy, and so they just had Gabrielle go, like, fight in her place. And that wasn't necessarily the best thing for her character arc, especially after season 4, to just, like, dive headfirst into, like, taking the charge on what the show was doing in terms of action and violence.
Yeah.
Like,
it wasn't very thoughtful.
No, I don't think so. And her ultimate person that catches the chakra at the end is not Xena, is going to be doing it differently. But, like, it's like, I sort of understand your concern for her, Vera,
Yes.
because she's not the same as Xena. Like, you're not super worried about Xena all the time, but you might be worried about her going up against.
Yeah, well, you're especially not worried about Xena, not only because she has all those skills, but she always has, like, the fucking long cons going.
Well, Gabs has
And,
learned the
like,
art of the long
I don't
con.
know.
Don't worry.
I do have to say that coming out of watching it now for, like, us recording it, I don't feel as worried for Gabrielle.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
I think she will... she just can't take the same jumping into crazy stuff as Xena. Like, she really has to be her own person.
Yeah.
And I think she will be. And especially, like, that line where how Xena was like, it's not how I would have done it, but, like, you did the job.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, to, like, come across older articles from the beginning of the show, fan articles on Whoosh and stuff, where they're about Gabrielle as pertains to her hero's journey, and they're just very much in a place of, like, seasons 1 and 2, where it's, like, her barding and her being, like, a writer and experiencing all this stuff with Xena is, like, the huge focus of these articles and what she's doing, and then I don't know, like, what people were thinking, like, if, like, her journey wasn't in the early days being thought of as something,
as a warrior,
as, like, yeah, as, like, but I mean, I think that is what it is.
I think,
like,
from the beginning, like, you know, Dreamworker, she, as we said, she picks up the sword.
Which, oh my
and
god,
I don't know. I think,
Jess Kaylee making that gift.
oh my god, that was incredible to witness.
yeah.
But I don't think that it was, like, overt. Even when she picked up the sword, it was more like, oh my god, she can now protect herself.
Right.
But I think and we talked about this in our early episodes where the idea was like, oh, maybe she'll be like a bard and like a nurse or like a doctor.
Right,
You know,
and
she'll
she
pick up the
weighs
healing
all
stuff.
those options. Yeah, the hospice with
Yeah.
Najara.
and she still is a bard.
Yeah, she
because
will continue
does
to, for sure.
continue to
Yeah,
write,
yeah.
and it continues to write about Xena. Do you ever wonder if, like, maybe the episode A Friend in Need parts 1 and 2 are the way they are because Gabrielle wrote them, and, like, maybe she had a hard time writing it, so it's just like
I love this.
She like
like
she expanded
sketchy.
upon Akemi's role.
it's just a little bit sketchy in some capacity.
She's like,
she was just
look,
really,
I
like,
really wasn't paying attention,
She
so I'm
was
not
trying-
sure how the plot logic
Yeah.
works, okay?
Yeah, she's like, I wasn't really there for most of it. I only know what Xena told me. I was fighting with this bird, and, like, I was like, I don't know. I only know what I know, and here's
an
kind of a
episode.
rough outline. I don't really feel good about stuff right now, so I gotta get it down before I forget. And, yeah. No, but anyway, yeah. Her journey is amazing.
Rob has said that if he could change anything about the final episodes of the show, he would have loved to leap into the future and spend an episode with Gabrielle, Warrior Princess.
Yes.
And I think that would have been really cool and definitely would have helped
man.
with some of these frustrations with the finale. Because I do want to spend more time with Gabs. I want to see Gabs really weigh these questions one more time. Like, how do I do violence in a way that I can live with? How do I, like, make sure I don't repeat the mistakes Xena made? Like, how can I be a better warrior in this world? How do I walk this path? You know, I think it would make Xena's sacrifice feel like better for people because you see that, you know, she isn't like depriving the world of a hero. Like Gabrielle is her legacy and is going to continue on. She's going to save those people who need saving.
Yeah. Plus, it's just so cool that, like, in a show called Xena Warrior Princess, it's really Gabrielle that does the big arc, the big journey. Not that Xena doesn't, it's just different.
Well,
she's already
yeah.
gotten to a place when the show starts. So, like, just having these awesome ladies do this
Stuff.
big story
Yeah.
is so good. I love it. I mean, it's, you know, it's not overly complicated. She just is on this hero's journey and, you know, by the end becomes a hero.
Yeah,
It's great.
It's very cool to see her. I forget I think it might have been you, Vera. You said she was Luke Skywalkering.
She's Luke Skywalkering, but, like, Luke Skywalker is a petulant baby who is doing, like, that
Gabrielle
he's
back
doing-
in the day was a
he's-
petulant baby,
No,
too.
no. He's, like, you know, if we're going to talk about the steps of the hero's journey or
Which
what
we should
have
say
you.
is not just, like, a phrase. It's Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell, hero's journey stuff, which is, you know, complicated in its own right, lots of factors, especially when you're talking about women, because women weren't really part of his study at all. They were
Do
like
I throw another coin in for the misogyny of
it's
Joseph
like,
Campbell?
I feel like, what are the criticisms of the hero? The hero's journey is basically like a set of steps that Joseph Campbell put together after studying, like, you know, thousands and thousands of years worth of writing across the world, putting together the idea of like the monomyth of the story that every culture keeps telling about, you know, a ordinary person who becomes extraordinary, basically.
And a lot of those characters are religious figures.
A lot of
you
them
have
yes.
like Gandhi, not Gandhi, Buddha, and Jesus.
Yeah, and you know, myths and legends of all kinds. I think some of you can go read it yourself, but just to like preface that we're not saying it's like this perfect model and that it's so good and fits Xena perfectly or whatever. Like the bigger criticisms of it are that like it sort of like flattens the idea of like cultural specificity, and therefore like if everything is the same across the world, that's like not true at all. I think we can agree there. And then also that because of the nature of the universe, that all these stories are not really about women, and thus a female hero's journey is not part of this model. So it's all about men, and it's all about like women are kind of like the prize for men at the end of the journey, or like a part of a dude's journey, and more of like
I mean,
a sexy reward.
That's what makes it cool then to see.
Exactly. So I think to kind of like look at her and look at Gabrielle in this, and you haven't really had that on TV. Again, it's one of those things that Xena does that is really like not a thing that you see like really very often at all. So just the simple pleasure of having a really cool female character like doing this hero's journey is super awesome, and I think super important for the show. And what I was sort of saying with Luke Skywalker is, they're on this same like sort of mentor hero's journey. Like he has Obi-Wan, she has Xena, but he's a reluctant hero, and she's not. She's just like, take me with you from the start. She's ready. She's jumping in front of the people, like ready to sacrifice herself for the village. She's like on board. Like she has moments along the way where she does reject the call. And in season 1, very early on, like does several things, like, you know, gets scared in battle and freezes up and panics. Like,
while playing the pan flute?
Yeah, while playing the pan flute. Like, you know, decides maybe it's more important for her to be a bard and goes to bard school. This is just like baby stuff.
Gabs.
But yeah.
But then in a larger scale way, she rejects the call of the warrior's call of the hero with her pacifism arc.
Right. Which has like one of the best payoffs.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Gotta love violence, I guess. Anyway, it's just I think it's great to see that she is the actual. Not to say that Xena isn't a hero, but like, that she is on this journey. Yeah. It's so cool.
One thing I want to say about the hero's journey is that you often see it described as, you know, the hero starts in the ordinary world and then crosses over, makes this decision to cross a threshold into this extraordinary world, and like learns lessons while they're there, and then has to make the decision to cross back and take with them kind of what they've learned, a boon.
Says Joseph Campbell.
A stupid word.
the boon.
I was like, okay, well, how do we fit this with Gabs? And I realized that like the extraordinary world that Gabs crosses into is being next to Xena, being with Xena.
Yeah.
Like, and then at the end, the return is the death of Xena.
Yeah.
Like she crosses back. She's back in the ordinary world, but the boon is her love.
Yeah.
The love she shared with Xena.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm going to cry.
So boon is a stupid word, but I like that it's a love boon.
A love boon. That will spread across the land.
Vera, didn't you have something you wanted to say about Take Me With You?
Oh, this is just random stuff. So I was like thinking, like, you know, we talked for 4 hours in the finale, and I was like, oh, this stuff I didn't get to say, like random thoughts that happened afterwards. I thought it was interesting how Akemi forcefully demands that Xena take her with her.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I mean, she doesn't, like, she's like, you will take me.
Like, as if it's already happened.
Like, exactly. Yeah. And Xena's like, oh, okay. And then, meanwhile, Gabs is like, asking.
To keep asking. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, that's because this had already happened to Xena.
Yeah, she's like, last time
a pretty girl said that to me, I had to cut off her head.
But yeah, that was interesting. She was very adamant.
Yeah. I also another thought I had was I already talked a lot about her bearing her sword initially in the finale, but I had more thoughts about it, so why not unpin those now? If you recall, I was really obsessed with how she had a hard time putting her sword into her little burial pit there, versus like in the premiere Sins of the Past, where she just like dumped all that shit in there. And another thought that I had was that the sword, as we saw in A Friend in Me Part 1, like it wasn't the same sword, but she was like a Widowmaker, the sword, it was like something she was proud of. And in Sins of the Past, she saw that sword and was like, oh, this is the sword that, created all these problems. I'm good now. Fuck you, sword. You can be buried. But in A Friend in Need 2, she's burying the sword that she now uses for the Way of the Warrior. So it was a lot harder for her to put down. She did so much good with it.
It's true. In a way, it feels like a bigger sacrifice in Friend in Need than in Sins of the Past.
For sure.
It really was just chasing this feeling of I want to feel better about things, whereas in Sins of the Past, I already feel pretty good about things, and I'm still doing this.
I reckoned with these feelings, Just some interesting thoughts.
There was also one other point we wanted to bring up that I think is very valid. People were upset that Gabrielle doesn't make good on her promise to take Xena's body back to Amphipolis to be
that we've seen. Oh, the body or like the ashes?
Well, the ashes would work too. That might
that's the same thing.
We think that's where she's going.
I might point out.
Yeah.
I mean, the ashes. She had to do the whole ritual of burning her, though. Like, it's not like she could have taken her body.
That was for resurrection.
Yeah, so she had to burn her, so that had to be done. So now she has the ashes.
Now she has the ashes.
She can easily just pop on over to Amphipolis
on her way to Egypt.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
And what did we decide about Amphipolis? I need to be reminded. Amphipolis,
it had a giant orgy, but it still exists. So she can go there.
I mean,
the tomb is still there.
The tomb is there.
The tomb has some graffiti on it, but it
the same thing. Like, it was all haunted and horrible the last time we saw it. But
Cyrene's
we
ghost
decided
still
that,
there?
like, because of what they've done,
Cyrene's ghost found peace.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
They, like, maybe fixed it and maybe it's going to be, like, revitalized.
I think it'll be fine.
I think the hipsters will open, like, a great,
brewery?
farmer's market and a brewery. Amphipolis will be fine.
But yeah,
artisan wine.
I understand that it is a huge
It would have
thing
been
in
nice
the show.
to see there.
Gabs wanted to, in the Abyss, like, says she wants to be buried, like, with her there as well.
Right.
Which is posed at being a haunted nonsense. So she thought it was fine to go back there.
Go back
there. But yeah, I don't think that her saying I'm gonna go, to the land of the pharaohs, go to Egypt, because they need to grow the chakram, means that she's not ever gonna do that. But if you, like, wanted to see that emotional payoff, obviously we don't get it. But she could go there immediately.
She
could. It could be that she goes to Greece and then goes to
Or
Egypt.
she could never put them away. And she always carries them and, like,
constantly.
talks to them and stuff.
Or, like we said before, she should go fucking find Eve. What the actual fuck?
She definitely needs to find Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely get the criticism, though, that, because there's no Eve, there's no Amphipolis, no Greece, you don't have these linking devices to help you feel more, like, nostalgic in a way. Like, this episode really doesn't connect very closely with anything that's been said in previous episodes, other than all our pins, of course.
What? I know. How dare you? We just went through a whole thing going, look at how it's so tied to the rest of the show.
But it would have been nice to have a callback, to that conversation in the Abyss.
I agree. It is a thing in the show. But I also get it as a bookend dialogue to the episode, so it doesn't overly bother me so much.
And I do just love the image of Gabrielle on the boat, sailing off to the future.
Who knows where,
I prefer looking forward than to looking backward.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we're not over Xena's grave at the end, that we're actually like on a new adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to me is a very optimistic ending.
Yeah, she can take care of that little urn until she gets back to Amphipolis. Which you did expect her to go back to Greece at some point. Like, she does still have a sister. She does still have a niece. She does still have Eve.
She got to check up on Sarah.
Yeah, how's Sarah doing?
There's a lot of stuff like where your final image visually is her being alone, I think was a source of upset.
Right.
And it's not true. She's, she doesn't have Xena, but she's not entirely
Plus
alone.
all the new characters she'll meet, like her own Gabrielle.
I just remembered I have a quote from Rob that I would like to read. He was asked in 2007 where he imagines Gabrielle going in the future. Like, what is her future after Friend in Need? This is what he has to say. I believe that she went back to the Amazons. She took the Amazon mantle that she had dodged for so long, ruling them. She built a strong tribe and stopped the stupid petty stuff that plagued the Amazons, like bad dancing.
Wow.
She never took another lover.
Oh.
But she got better with the chakram than Xena ever was. With her weapons proficiency, she eliminated the enemies of the Amazons and later in life became a dedicated public servant and did good in the way that she now could as a powerful, intelligent, experienced woman. I think that she grew from the death of Xena and the birth of Gabrielle, the warrior princess, like the birth, this is not grammatically correct, Rob.
It's hard to talk. We understand.
We understand. Her birth as Gabrielle, the warrior princess, in many ways justified Xena's death and her separation from Xena. She never would have been truly able to shine as brightly while standing in Xena's shadow.
Interesting.
But
I feel like fandom would not agree with that, but go ahead.
Fandom would not agree with that, but I get you, Rob. Then he has another idea.
Okay.
Or
just fishing. Just nonstop fishing.
She went to the British Isles to seek druid help and discovered a land of fairies and little people. There, seated on her throne like a Titania figure as the leader of the fairy realm, was a figure that looked every bit like Xena. Yes, right down to the scar on her breast. Gabrielle now is faced with the conflicted position of does she find a way to make this person big and fit the rule of Xena? For certainly the druids needed a hero to help with their issues.
Wait, she's little? She's like a tiny little Xena?
I think she might be a fairy.
And she has to make her big?
Rob!
Or make him
stop talking.
Does she make herself into a fairy and become Xena's number one friend? By Xena, he means the fairy. And live in this benign fairy paradise, or question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
I like the first thing better.
I don't like any of these.
I'm a little upset if she could not find another person.
I don't like that. I don't like
need
that
her
statement
to be
at all.
celibate.
I don't like that at all.
I don't need her to. I mean, if she didn't, that's okay too. But I don't like precluding it out. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So,
For the record, Clark took another lover. On the 100.
That's true.
But
and it was male because she wasn't gay.
Oh, that's funny. This kind of reminds me too of I do think it's important to bring up the cast reaction to a bit that you will find as well as time has gone on. Particularly, I'm going to say Lucy Lawless feels really terrible about the finale. When you see quotes from her, I think it's really easy to take those quotes and be like, see, it's bad.
Yeah.
Because it's Lucy Lawless.
But she's in a position that's
But I
really
think
terrible.
that it's really, really important to, and I'm not saying that her opinion is wrong or invalid, of course, but that I think that being confronted with fandom a lot and going to the cons and things like that, that she got the brunt of a lot of the fandom pain and stuff. So I can totally see why she feels very shitty and a lot of remorse for the finale as well. So I totally understand where those quotes are coming from. I just feel like that should be brought up because I think I see that a lot where people are like, Lucy hates it. They should do it again. Do more. Do a reboot. Fix it. La la la. Renee doesn't. So that's another thing.
She likes how her character ended.
Yeah, well, it's good. I think Lucy didn't have a problem with it at first, and then after seeing the fan reaction, just really was like, oh shit.
Which very much goes with Lucy's sort of, she's an emotional, in the moment person. She's not an analytical thinker, and it just didn't occur to her that this would have any kind of repercussion. So I think she was, more than anyone, maybe really distressed by it.
And I could totally see why. I mean, you're talking about Robin. That stuff made me want to mention that.
Yeah, Rob stands by it.
Yeah,
as you can hear.
Robin Renee. Yeah,
and of course they still talk about rebooting the show. I'm sure if they were to reboot it, that it probably would be fixed in some shape or form. I do think, despite everything we've been saying, like it's just clear that they wanted to continue the story. That Friend in Need was never meant to be the last word.
To go into that Buffy territory, Liv, I liked what you were kind of saying earlier, where if they did just do then a movie afterwards and this wasn't the end, then they would have to bring her back. And what does that mean for the journey that she was on? And having Xena and Buffy die at the same time, and then Buffy did come back and Xena did not get to, like the stuff that happened on Buffy with her dealing with having come back from somewhere where she did feel at peace was very interesting. So I think Xena could have gone through something similar too. Not that I want them to be doing the same thing, but I'm saying it can be done. It's
suddenly Xena's having hate sex with Spike, and you're like,
what's happening? But yeah, so it would have continued, and it didn't. And anyway,
it definitely would have been cool to see a new paradigm where Xena was not looking for redemption, where that was finally behind her, and they could kind of do something new. Exactly. I think that would be really interesting. Yeah, there is more story to tell for those characters. Yeah.
Facts. Okay.
I never talked about Starbuck. I don't know.
Starbuck.
She died.
Yeah. You said you were going to spoil
talk
BSG.
about it. For some reason, we didn't. Oh well.
Well, I think we were going through trying to just come up with some precedent. Like, give us your, female characters in TV who have died, who are like lead characters.
Yeah, leads.
And we actually had a hard time coming up with a lot of dead female leads because there are so few female leads in the first place who are central to their show
with everything.
Who dies sort of like in the finale or like towards the end or something.
Yeah. So
Starbuck was one of them.
Is an example.
Yeah.
What did you have something you wanted to say about her?
I didn't have a problem with it again, as usual. Because I was like, she's on this show still. I didn't really reckon with how she's like, whatever, who knows what she is now.
Ghost.
Yeah, but whatever. She disappeared in the finale.
Yeah. And of course, that's something that's kind of going on in Friend in Need too, which is, it's such an interesting structure that actually Xena doesn't die at the end. She dies at the beginning of the second part.
Yeah.
She dies at the halfway point, really. And the rest of it, she's this ghost, which in a way softens the blow. I do feel like...
Unless you're watching the broadcast version and you think she's going to be resurrected until like 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
Then it's like real bad. The blow's like real bad.
Is hard. But at the same time, like thinking about the violence, the fact that you still have Xena running around with her blowout while we're talking about her mutilated corpse. I mean, just sort of changes the vibe a bit. You have to admit. Like, she's still there. She looks fabulous. Not too sure about the hair. But
that was the best sentence ever. Her running around with her blowout while we're talking about her mutilated corpse. Oh, good. Oh, it's good.
I think we maybe have unpinned all the pins.
I think we've elaborated on more stuff that we didn't get to super elaborate on, and then we still are going to talk about it because we have the season 6 finale mailbag to talk about. Continuous topics. If you want us to elaborate more on stuff that we have said already in A Friend in Need Part 1, Part 2, or also this just discussion in general, we will go into your questions and comments yet further, so send us those.
Yes, please send them to us.
And also other things.
We won't see them right away because we'll be on vacation, but we're excited to see them when we get back.
Woohoo! All right, I guess that wraps it up.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
Follow us on the stuff and things.
Yeah, xenawarriorpodcast.com. All the links and etc. are there. We are on Patreon, where we'll be continuing the Lucy Lawless IMDb experience, of which we have a lot to cover.
Yeah.
So go check us out over there. And we will be getting back into that soon. Soon-ish. And yeah, that reminds me, like, after the mailbag, we'll start into some more Xena-related Patreon episodes, Patreon-funded minisodes. So we have those on the horizon as well. And then sometimes they won't be Xena-related, but sometimes they will be.
Yeah, maybe in the mailbag we'll begin to give you guys some teasers of what topics we will be discussing in those minisodes. So look forward to that.
So follow us on the social medias. Twitter is at Xena Warrior Pod, and Instagram is Xena Warrior Podcast, and then Tumblr and Facebook, Xena Warrior Podcast. Yeah.
The power!
The passion!
The podcast!